Hi, this is John with I Customize and I Repair. We're going to be attempting a full gold customization for iPhone. We have the gold bezel, SIM card tray, buttons, even the anti-dust mesh for the earpiece. And notice these little round silver parts, they will go in the buttons in the indentation. Don't forget that or you won't get a good connection. Here's the phone we're going to be customizing. And we're going to go ahead and throw new parts in. The only thing that won't be new in the phone will be the logic board and a couple of pieces, screws that hold the buttons in place, along with one metal bracket that holds the volume up down buttons. Okay, the first part is going to be tearing down the old iPhone, and we'll start that. Okay, first thing I like to do when disassembling an iPhone is I put two pieces of tape down to hold the screws. I try and organize them in the way they came out of the iPhone to ensure that I'm putting the right screws back in the right places. When I first started out, I actually drew little circles and diagrammed that they came out of the logic board, and made sure to put the screws in the circles. However, I'm just going to be putting them in pretty much anywhere as I've become quite accustomed to it. But we'll go ahead and start. We're going to remove the bottom screws and the back, and we'll continue after that point. Okay, bottom screws, back are off. The first part will be removing the battery. We have to remove that screw. Then we'll use I believe it's called the sponger tool, to pry up the battery connector. Always pry from right here to ensure that I don't damage the logic board. And do it slowly, carefully. And there'll be the screw, and then this part, it's a connector cover for the antenna connector. The battery, pry up from this side as it is adhesed, and pry up and out from this side, and you're going to get your best results. Okay, we have the battery out and the battery screw and the connector cover and battery. Okay, the next step is going to remove the main cable covers or hold downs, and the main one for the logic board, this is for the dock connector, and then the cover for the top part of the logic board. There's 5 screws on that, 2 screws on here, and I'll try and keep them organized as they are all different sizes. Okay, removed all the screws. The cover for the battery or the dock connector cable is right there with the 2 screws. The top cover I left on. It will need to be pried. Let's see if I can get this in there. Back towards the bottom, as there's 2 little parts that slide in. So you come back and then up to get that out. Let's see if I can do it while I'm recording. Okay. So this part right here and over here kind of slid in. Okay, and so that's why you have to go downwards and then up. Okay, now at the top, if you take a close look, there's a silver part right where the top, the longest screw goes. Okay, make sure that you don't get that piece off, otherwise it will greatly affect your Wi-Fi. That piece has to be there or you're going to get a very bad Wi-Fi signal. Okay. The next part would be to remove the camera, which is just connected by the cable here. The motor, which has the vibrate motor, which has 2 screws and just pops right out after that, and then we'll go from there. Okay, we've removed the camera, just that cable connector down at the bottom. Remove the motor, 2 screws, and I wanted to point out on the top cable hold down how I have the 5 screws out and they're lined up on my tape as to the direction that they go into the motherboard. So this one there, that there, longer one up top middle, and this one over here. Okay, and if you can see, they are different sizes, so you want to make sure and keep them organized. Okay, next step, I was hoping that I wouldn't have to take off the entire logic board. However, to get to the top cable, which is the power button and the proximity sensors, I'm going to have to remove the logic board. To get to the side, I'm going to have to remove 3 screws that are on the volume up and down buttons and 2 screws that are on the vibrate button. Okay, and I will have to reuse a metal piece that goes right there over the volume buttons, and then 2 pieces that go over the vibrate button. For the power button up top, I will have to reuse the 2 screws, and I believe that's everything. We'll cross that road when we get there. Okay, to remove the rest of the logic board, we're going to have to pop off 5 cables. The digitizer and LCD cable are these 2. This one comes off first and it goes up in this direction. Same with this one, but it's underneath this cable, so this comes off first, this second, and fold up. These 3 come down. I'll do that and show. Okay, we popped the 5 cables off. These came up and these 3 down. Okay, now there's several screws on the logic board. This one, you'll need a small flathead to get it out. And you have one with a water damage detector right here in the middle. And then down at the bottom, underneath the dock cable, which just folds up, you'll have to remove this screw and the only other thing you'll have to remove to pull the logic board is the SIM card. Important to do that, forget, and you can't figure out why the logic board won't come out, and you could seriously damage it by forcing it. Okay, we removed those 3 screws. The only other thing which I failed to mention previously was the antenna cable, and that just pops straight up, fairly easy. Be careful, once again, don't want to damage. But the 3 screws are here. This was the top one that you would need the flathead, and then the middle one with the water detector indicator on it, and the bottom one that held the speaker assembly. You do not have to take both for the speaker assembly out to remove the logic board. However, if you were doing a screen change, you would need to do that. Moving on, we'll get the logic board out and we'll go to the next step. Okay, we have the logic board out. The next step in just doing, we're not going to use the current parts, but we will need the screws and a couple other pieces from the buttons. But we will be taking 3 screws out of this part for the volume button. Along with that, there will be a metal plate that is part of it, and the vibrate button. There'll be 2 pieces that we'll need to salvage from this phone. You could actually carefully peel up the flex cables. The volume button also includes the headphone jack and the vibrate button, so that's all one cable. And then the cable for the proximity detector and power switch is another cable, and you could carefully peel those up and reuse them, but if you choose to do it that way, you'll want to do it extremely slow. One other thing that we'll need to salvage is the SIM pin ejector, and let's see if I can get that in there. Okay, it is located right there. See the screw? Turn it over. May need to take the screen off to get to it. Didn't think that would be there, but the screw screws down from the inside. So yeah, I think I'm going to need to take the screen off to get that little piece right there that ejects the SIM. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do the screen removal first. And that's going to remove a small screw in each corner. Okay, and then there's 3 screws on each side, which you don't have to remove. Will make it quite a bit easier in a screen replacement if you don't remove them, just loosen them. So 3 on this side, 3 on this side, and then 1 in each corner. We are going to have to remove the speaker assembly and antenna, which is just the 2 screws, and it pops right out. Nothing really holding it in place, but we have to remove that to get to the screws in the corners. Okay, I removed the 4 screws in the corner. Not focusing well. There we go. And I removed the 1 screw that was holding the speaker assembly in. And now I'm going to work on getting the screen off. Always start at the top using the sponger tool. Force it down in between the screen and the bezel. Take your time. You'll hear the adhesive kind of crackling when it's loosening, but slowly work your way down around the sides, and like I said, take your time, do it slow using the sponger tool, and you won't have any issues. Okay, showing I got the sponger tool in. Now I'll slowly move around the outside until I get all the way around. Once again, you'll hear the tape crackling and releasing, and you're going to be good. The two cables that will come through are right here. They'll come through the front. Just go slowly. Make sure that the room it's a little bit smaller, so you'll push them together like such to get through the hole. And I'll come back when I have the screen off. Okay, screen is off with no issues. And I'm looking at this bezel, and it's in really nice shape, so I think I might salvage it in case somebody comes in and needs a repair for the bezel. But moving along, the next step we're going to do is we'll go ahead and get the SIM pin ejector, and we got one little screw right there, and we'll switch that to the gold bezel, and then we'll move on to the volume and vibrate button. Okay, we removed the ejector from the old bezel and we placed it in the new one. Just make sure the widest part is right over the holes for ejecting, and you're good. The next part we're going to work on is the buttons. So a total of 5 screws, and I'll show you that when they're off. Alright, remove the 5 screws and take a closer look. Now over here we have this black part that was just a piece of plastic, I guess like shielding over the volume button screws. Okay, and then we have the 5 screws there. The 3 bottom ones go to the volume, and the 2 top ones go to the vibrate. And let's see if I can. Alright, this metal piece right here is what we'll be salvaging. We're going to remove the flex cable from it. It's just got adhesive to it. Okay, and then on the vibrate, there's 2 parts that we'll be reusing. I'll have to kind of pull them out to really show you, but I'll show you when I get them out. Okay, this is the flex cable for the vibrate button, volume up and down buttons, and headset jack. There's a water damage indicator on the bottom of the headphone jack, and as you can see it's still white. I'm going to go ahead and use this part as opposed to the brand new one, as I'm afraid I might damage this part removing it from this metal piece. And it looks, you know, like brand new, so I think this part's going to be fine to reuse. On the vibrate button, you have this part which goes over top of it to hold it in place, and then there's the outer metal piece that you need to reuse also if you're replacing it with a new one. As the, let me grab the new one and show you the difference. Okay, look at the new one. Here's the vibrate button right here, so you would have to keep that entire piece to go over that. okay. The other part is sometimes it's a pain to make the folds in the flex cable the way that they need to go, and this is already routed appropriately. You see, you have to fold this part over the metal piece, the cable, the new cable. You'd remove this adhesive, and that actually goes against the headset jack, and then of course these adhere to the mid frame. So I'm just going to reuse this. It's already ready to go, and it's going to save a lot of time. Okay, on the new buttons, we're going to have to put this little silver piece in there, and then these two little silver pieces in here. Now, most kits do not include those silver pieces, so you'll need to pry them off the old buttons and adhere them to the new ones. They already have adhesive on them, so normally you can just, take it off the old one and put it on the new one, and it's fine. So I use a straight pin to get it off, and then put it on, make sure it's lined up right. Otherwise your buttons are not going to work. Okay, we placed the little metal buttons inside the volume up and down button and the power button. Now we're going to proceed to put the volume up and down button in and the vibrate. Okay, we have the buttons in place for volume up and down. And you can even hear them click when turned. And the vibrate. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to route the cable so it fits in correctly as it was in the old bezel. And then we'll move on to the proximity sensor power cable. Okay, the power button has two screws. And the proximity cable is routed under the speaker. The speaker is actually adhered to part of it. So as opposed to putting a new one in, I'm going to go ahead and try and reuse this also, as this phone looks like it's in excellent condition. Before I take the proximity cable and speaker off, I'm going to go ahead and remove the front camera. Front camera is held in place by this metal piece right here. It clips on 3 points: over here, down here, and over here. And you just loosen that up, this metal piece comes straight off, and the camera is released. Now that the camera's out, I'm going to slowly remove the power cable proximity cable and hopefully save everything intact. And if I can, that's going to save a lot of work, and we'll see what other parts I need to cannibalize off of this phone to do the conversion. Okay, part of the proximity cable is adhered to this point right here. So I'm going to slowly remove that, and once again try and salvage everything, and I'll show you a picture of it removed versus a new one. Okay, here's the power cable removed with the ear speaker adhered to it versus a new one. See, right here is the part that adheses to the top, and these are two parts that we're cannibalizing out of the old phone. This plastic piece, as it does not have one there, and this spacer that's right above the speaker right there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put the new gold power button in and try and see if I can get this one into place. Okay, we have the power cable in place. Couple key things about that. The larger screw goes here and the smaller screw over here. Okay, and the power button, there's a little metal part that flips up and down on the button. That should be, if you're looking at it from this point of view, it should be down closest to the middle of the mid frame or the bottom, not next to the back but closer to the front. And then the little sensor that I had to peel off is actually right by the headphone jack, so I had to move the headphone jack out of the way to adhere it to here. And then if we look on the opposite side, you want to make sure that the two sensors, the ambient light sensor and the proximity sensor, are correctly in place here. If they're not, that will cause issues when you are on the phone. Sometimes the display won't shut off, and you can mute or dial while you're talking to somebody with your face. So everything's looking good for that. The next step will be the camera, and we're going to try and use as much as we can out of this phone. There's one thing that seems to be missing. It's a little circular clear plastic part that goes around the camera. And it doesn't seem to be on here. I will see if it is necessary, or maybe it's just laying around here somewhere. Okay, I'm putting the camera in right now, and if you look at the part that holds it down, it's got 3 prongs, and it does fit over the camera like such. Get it lined up, make sure it hits the appropriate points so it does stay in place. Okay, camera's in place from this point, and right here on the front, notice there's a lot of area around the camera. Well, that's because stuck to the front screen is the clear plastic piece that I was talking about, right here. So I'll take that off, put it in place, and the camera will be snug right where it's supposed to be. And then we'll move on to the dock connector. Quickly had to show the camera with the clear plastic piece around it. And like I said, moving along to the dock connector. The dock connector, I think I can salvage this. So what we're going to do is first we're going to remove the button. If I can get it focused. And you need to flip up here. Let's see. Right here to release the cable. And then we'll remove the 2 screws, slowly pull it out, and we'll put it into the new bezel. Okay, looking at the dock connector, the water indicator is red. So now this is actually quite common with the dock connectors, and they seem to function, fine on. I haven't changed unless the owner requests it, but I am going to go ahead and put one on just to be safe. But I've been told that even having your bathroom during a steamy shower can set this detector off, but we'll go ahead and throw a new one in just to be sure. Okay, it seems I'm going to have to cannibalize 2 more parts, and let's see if I can point this out nicely. Alright, we have this little piece right here above the screen for the speakers, and this little piece right here above the screen on the opposite side. So I'm going to have to reuse those, and when I come back, hopefully the dock will be completely in and we'll be moving along. Okay, we have the new dock connector in. Everything went smooth. Now we're going to have to calibrate the 6 screws that I said not to take out at the beginning of the video. If you are purchasing a bezel to do a conversion, go ahead and get the screw set, unless you plan on completely cannibalizing the old phone. But it's always good to have a screw set just in case you might strip one. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to cannibalize the 6 screws, and then we'll work on putting the new screen on. Actually, we'll be doing the button first. So when I come back, we'll be prepared for that. Okay, we took the 6 screws out of the old bezel and put them in the new. Not an easy task as they all have a washer on them. I actually added a magnet to my magnetic screwdriver to make sure that they stayed in place. It wasn't too bad. But next step, the button. Now, one thing that's also not included is this little metal piece right here. So we're going to have to take that out. I'll use a straight pin to put it out and then put it in the new bezel. And we have the button. And you could, it's just adheres to this flexible strip. You can use a straight pin and slowly pry around the adhesion. There's 2 sets of adhesion, one for the silver button and then one for the whole thing. Try and get under both and then attach it to your new button. If you are putting a new flex cable on, it's got the adhesion on already, and there's a groove to show you exactly which way it goes in. So we're going to switch the button out and the little silver piece and put everything in and then move along. Okay, we have the new button in place. Ready for the new screen. Make sure and take the blue cover off, and then when you route the cables through, make sure that this cable sometimes gets stuck and will be shorter than this cable when you pull it through the phone. Make sure, absolutely sure, that this goes through. It's just a tad longer, and if you don't get it through, you'll bend it and you could have real problems. Okay, one other thing I forgot was the mesh screen, anti-dust mesh screen that we have. Okay, I put in several phones together without putting that in there and had to take it all apart, so don't forget that. Okay, we have the screen in place, 10 screws, the 6 on the sides, 1 in each corner. Made sure that the button was properly aligned and moved easily. I'm not going to show you the front of the screen until the phone's done. And put that little black shielding over the volume up and down buttons. And the next step is we're going to put the logic board back in. We'll reassemble it. And if you have not reassembled one, check out my other video. Actually, that's the iPhone 4S. So I guess I'll go through the steps. First, I'll put the base in and the logic board at the same time. Put the 3 screws that came out of the logic board, one up here that we had to use a flat head, one here that had the water indicator, and the one down in the corner that also held the speaker assembly in, along with one over here for the other part of the speaker assembly. Okay, a couple key things when you're putting the logic board and speaker assembly in is make sure that the antenna cable right here is above the logic board, and that it is properly in place on this pin right here by my finger, and there's a little groove in the top part of the bezel that the top of the logic board slides into. I'm not going to focus on that. Okay, well, make sure it's in place, and then put your screws in to hold the logic board down, and we'll move from there. Okay, we have the logic board back in. Went ahead and connected all the flex cables. 5 on top, dock connector flex cable, and the antenna. I'm going to put the vibrate motor back in, the cable covers, and then the battery, and the back, and after it's all back together, we will try and do a reveal. Okay, we're done. Full customization, bezel, buttons, mesh screen on the earpiece, the bottom screws are all gold, SIM tray, I'm almost prepared to downgrade to a iPhone 4. That is sharp.